He never thought he would see her again. 12 years had passed. 12 long years since the girl who had once carried his heart so effortlessly slipped away. Back then, everything had been raw, urgent, and full of emotion. Their love had been innocent, yet intense, a fragile world built between two college students who believed they could outlast everything. But life had a way of intervening. Her family moved abroad suddenly. Their promises of staying in touch turned into vague messages that arrived less frequently and eventually stopped altogether. He tried to keep the memory alive, in letters never sent, in songs never played aloud, in quiet nights filled with her imagined presence. He wondered sometimes if she ever thought of him. Over the years, he built a life, not the one he had dreamed of with her, but a life he could live with. There were successes and there were failures. There were friends, acquaintances, and fleeting relationships, but love, the real kind, had left a permanent imprint that no one could erase. And then came the day, an ordinary day that suddenly became extraordinary. He was walking through a crowded street in the city, the winter sun falling gently on the sidewalks, when he saw her. She was just as he remembered, yet completely changed. Her hair had hints of silver at the temples. Her eyes carried the weight of life he had never seen before, and there was a softness in her smile that made his heart ache. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Time had created a chasm between them, not a small one, but a canyon. And yet, looking at her, he realized that some things, some feelings, were stubborn. They refused to die. She saw him too. Her eyes widened slightly, recognition mingling with disbelief. And then came that hesitant smile, the kind that carries 1,000 unspoken words. "Hi," she said. 12 years, and just one word, but it felt like a symphony. He smiled back, but his heart betrayed him, pounding as if it had never moved on. They decided to sit at a nearby cafe, the same one that had existed even when they were younger. Memories filled the air with every step, every glance, every pause in conversation. "How have you been?" he asked, trying to sound casual. I've been okay," she replied softly, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. "Life happened, I guess." They laughed quietly, but it was fragile, tinged with nostalgia and regret. He wanted to tell her everything he had felt over the years, the nights he had lain awake thinking about her, the letters he had written but never sent, the moments he had imagined being with her, but words failed him. She spoke about her life, her career, her struggles, her achievements, and he listened, fascinated by the strength she had built over a decade. But every sentence she spoke also reminded him of what he had lost, the life they could have had together if circumstances had been different. He wanted to reach out and tell her, "I never stopped loving you." But he couldn't, because 12 years ago, they had lost the chance to truly fight for each other. And now, to say it aloud would feel like reopening a wound that both of them had tried, consciously or unconsciously, to close. He watched her laugh at something small, the light in her eyes unchanged, and his chest tightened. She noticed the change in him, the way his hands fidgeted, the way his smile trembled at times. "Are you happy?" he asked, carefully, trying to measure the weight of the question. She paused. "Yes, I am," she said finally. And in those words, he heard the finality of all the years they had lost. They walked through the streets after leaving the cafe, talking about trivial things, avoiding the bigger topics that both knew would break them if addressed. The winter wind carried memories of their younger selves, the laughter, the shared secrets, the promises whispered in moonlit corridors that had never come true. For a moment, he felt angry at time, at fate, at the choices that had been forced upon them. He wanted to yell, to demand explanations from life itself, but anger gave way to a deeper sorrow. Because it wasn't just time that had separated them, it was the inevitable flow of life, circumstances, decisions, obligations, and sometimes fear. He remembered the day she left. He had been too young to understand the weight of her departure. He had believed he would wait, that letters would arrive, that distance was temporary, but life moved forward, as it always does, and soon he realized that waiting was futile. And yet, seeing her now, he understood that some love never truly dies. They walked to a park bench overlooking the river, the water flowing endlessly, indifferent to human hearts. He wanted to tell her everything, that she had haunted his dreams, that she had shaped every choice he had made, but he didn't. Because sometimes love is not about reclaiming what was lost. It is about accepting that some moments exist only in memory, beautiful and untouchable. She leaned back on the bench, her hair catching the fading sunlight. "You look different,"
she said, and he understood that it wasn't just his appearance she noted, but the weight in his eyes, the years of experiences etched into his expression. I guess we're different people now, he replied softly. Yes, they were. 12 years had made them strangers, and yet somehow the same souls intertwined by memory. The sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the river. It was time to leave. They walked to the edge of the street where they had first met years ago, silent now, as if words could not capture what they felt. Take care of yourself, he said finally. You too, she replied, her voice breaking slightly. There was a pause, a moment suspended in time, where both wished for an impossible undoing of the years, a chance to reclaim lost opportunities. But life doesn't work that way. He watched her disappear into the crowd, her figure blending into the city that had moved on, just as he had. Walking back alone, he felt a strange mixture of pain and peace. Pain for what could have been, peace for finally seeing her, for finally knowing that she was okay, for finally accepting that some love, no matter how deep, exists not to possess, but to teach. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to smile. Not because he was happy, but because he understood the beauty of a love that could endure in memory. 12 years had separated them. Life had changed them. And yet, in the quiet corners of his heart, she would always remain, the first love he could never forget, the girl he saw again, but could never hold. And sometimes, that was enough.